While not a single pointel pattern saw the light of day in 2023, we've had like 20 new pointel patterns in the last week. Hello, knitting friends. Welcome back to the Better One Knits. I'm your host, Kristen, and today my ridiculous humidity hair and I are chatting with you about why I have been blacklisting some pattern designers from my pattern searches and how you can do the same if you are interested. So, if that's got your attention, grab a project to work on and let's dive in. All right, before we dive in, what I'm wearing today is a pattern of my own design. This is the Orilla top, which I designed in Knitting for Olive cotton merino a couple of years back, and it has this nice I-cord tie that goes through this channel across the neck so that you can tighten it up. You can make the neck narrower or wider. And the caveat that yes, it is still summer. And yes, my children are still here making a lot of noise because it's too hot to be outside unless you're in a pool. Hopefully, we will not have too many interruptions. All right, so let's dive into the topic at hand, which is blacklisting knitting pattern designers. And I'm using that term kind of in the absence of anything better. It sounds really bad, I think. But what I really just mean is that I am excluding them from consideration when it comes to buying patterns. So maybe the concept of blacklisting sounds a little controversial, but I don't think it's controversial to say that the algorithm-based social media has really homogenized knitting. And at least to me, that seems very counterintuitive at a time when we have more access to patterns than ever before, we have more patterns than ever before, and we have more pattern designers than ever before. And yet, most of us are kind of knitting the same popular patterns from a handful of designers. So I recently watched a video from Deborah Knits. I will include a link in the description box down below about how the Rhinebeck sweater has evolved. You know, once upon a time, you went to Rhinebeck. I haven't been in a few years, but if you have gone in the past, you'll be familiar. Everybody had a Rhinebeck sweater, but there was all different kinds of sweaters. There was no single Rhinebeck sweater. You could just see, you know, occasionally there was a group that maybe did a knit along for a specific pattern, but you could just see all kinds of patterns, vintage patterns, new patterns, you know, popular designers, never heard of designers, all kinds of different sweaters would be on display at Rhinebeck. And now it seems like about half the people in attendance are wearing whatever Andrea Mowry's Rhinebeck sweater pattern is for the year, or maybe one of her older Rhinebeck sweater patterns. And then everyone else is just wearing, again, like a handful of the most popular recent designs from the most popular recent designers. And so there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Everyone knits what they like. That's great. It's great for Andrea, obviously. She's built this thriving knitting pattern business. Other popular designers have done the same. It's definitely fun for the people who are interested in participating in that knit along, being part of that community. But for some of us, it has gotten a little boring. So I did do a video at least a year ago, maybe more, that got a lot of reactions. I will do the thing here on one of these sides about whether or not knitting has gotten boring. So from some perspectives, knitting has gotten boring because it has all gotten very much the same. And the reason that we're all wearing the same thing is that we're all seeing the same thing because of that algorithm-based social media. And just to be clear, this is not something that I am immune from. You know, it can be fun to hop on a trend. It can be really entertaining to join a knit along, be part of a community. And sometimes, you know, that really basic pattern from that very popular designer is actually what I need, you know, in my wardrobe. But when you kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture, that's when the sort of homogeneity, the sameness, becomes really apparent in something that is supposed to be kind of a creative hobby. Maybe that's not the way you feel. That's fine. This video is therefore not for you, and that's also fine. And it's easy to say, well, the algorithm's going to push what's popular, and what are you going to do? But I actually think it's a little bit more complicated than that. Definitely, it's still all about the algorithm, but the algorithm itself creates this self-perpetuating cycle, because the algorithm is going to take the stuff from those most popular designers and start pushing that. And in order to have their content seen by the algorithm and pushed, the yarn shops and the content creators and the other people who are part of the knitting industry that want to get their stuff seen are going to jump on whatever that trend is, or whoever that trendy person is, in order to get their stuff seen. So yes, the algorithm is pushing so and so, but so are the yarn shops, so are the indie dyers, so is the influencer. So in that way, the algorithm is not only pushing that stuff, but also kind of forcing other creators to also push it, with the end result that you get this major concentration of attention on a very small number of designers and a small number of trends, and everything else gets kind of left behind. So what I mean by this is, when such and such popular designer releases her new pattern, this very same day, there are the yarn shops with their kits and their samples ready for you to buy the stuff to make that whatever XYZ pattern is. And then the algorithm sees that this designer's design has a lot of pointel. So it's going to start, this post, whatever it is getting a lot of interaction. Everybody likes this. It's got to be because it's pointel. So we're just going to start pushing all the pointel into your feed. So then that content creator who is trying to get their stuff seen is like, okay, well, pointel is the thing, and I got to do the pointel thing so that the algorithm will then boost my stuff. And then another smaller designer who is trying to get seen is like, okay, well, pointel is now the big trend, and I better design something with pointel so that my stuff gets seen. And then, while not a single pointel pattern saw the light of day in 2023, we've had like 20 new pointel patterns in the last month. And I'm certainly not saying this is new. Trends are just a part of life. It's the speed at which they're developing and sort of the all-encompassing nature of these trends. So we're in this era of content consumption, for better or worse. In-person knitting communities are less common than they used to be, and a lot of social interaction is happening online, not just in the knitting communities, in all of the communities. A lot of what used to be in person, smaller groups, more insulated, is now online, bigger, broader, and more pervasive. And so in order to feel like you are part of the knitting community, you are going to want to be part of that. You're going to be spending time interacting with different knitters and designers and yarn dyers on Instagram. You're going to be watching the podcasts on YouTube. You may not feel like you're part of the knitting community if you are not actively participating in these online spaces. And then that means all of this stuff is constantly bombarding you. If you are on Instagram, if you are on YouTube, you're not going to be able to escape whatever the latest popular design is, whoever the big designer of the moment is. It's just going to be pushed at you over and over again from all sides, from the designers, from the yarn dyers, from the yarn shops, from the podcasters, from the content creators, all the time, all at once in these online spaces. So like I said, trends are nothing new. So I've been knitting for a few years, and definitely in the early days of knitting, there were trends, there were popular designers, there were viral patterns. There was the February lady sweater, but at least in my personal opinion, it felt different. The pervasiveness of it was different. Yes, there were trends, but there were also spaces that you could occupy where you could get away from those trends. Um, there were popular designers, but the popularity was spread out, at least, seems to me, among more designers. So now it's kind of more inescapable and it is concentrated on a smaller subset of the design community. So a smaller number of designers, a smaller number of designs. At least in my personal opinion, we've gone from kind of like fun to overwhelming sometimes. And kind of the really tricky part, which I touched on a minute ago, is that there's no opt out. You can unfollow so and so on Instagram. You can not subscribe to their newsletter, but you're still going to see the stuff because other people are pushing it. You're going to see your favorite podcasters knitting that popular designer's patterns. You're going to see your yarn shops promoting the kits. You're going to see the content creators, making the silly reels about the popular patterns. And there's no easy out unless you are willing to absent yourself from the online knitting community. And again, in some cases, that's really the only knitting community available to some people. They don't have a local community. They don't have knitting buddies. They don't have a local yarn store. Online is what they've got. And online can increasingly feel overwhelmingly like it's telling you what to knit with what yarn. If you don't want to absent yourself from the online knitting community, I know I certainly do not. It can still be a very fun place to be. I still love watching the podcasts, despite this kind of sameness, making things feel a little repetitive and like we need some fresh air. I still want to be part of that community. So what is it that you can do? And here's where we're going to get to what I'm calling blacklisting, but sounds meaner than I think it actually is. So in order to take back a little bit of control over what you're seeing, we're going to go over to Ravelry. Now, Ravelry did used to have more of a social element, more of a community element. Unfortunately, if you're a newer knitter, you may not be familiar with this. A few years back, Ravelry did a big redesign of the site. Some users started complaining about eye strain, headaches, things like that, and they were very dismissive of people's concerns. And at that point, really, that kind of community social element, I don't want to say disappeared, but really scaled back on Ravelry. We're just not using it for that so much anymore. But Ravelry remains the best pattern database and point of sale for knitting patterns, and you have a lot of control over what you see. So of course, you have the hot right now. That's the kind of default way to browse patterns. That's going to tell you what's the most popular. But there are, I think, like about a dozen options for ways that you can just browse patterns. And then you have a very powerful set of search filters for when you're actively looking for certain kinds of patterns. And that is what we're going to use to blacklist our designers. So what I mean by blacklist is that I am removing particular designers entirely from my Ravelry pattern search results. So if I click on the hot right now to browse patterns, these designers aren't there. If I put in some criteria to find a new pattern that I want to knit, these designers are not there. These designers are not an option for me. I still know they exist. because again, there's no opt out. I'm still seeing them on Instagram. I'm still seeing people knitting them on YouTube. You know, whatever new pattern they've got, I still know about it. But at the actual time that I am perhaps looking for a pattern, looking to make a purchase, they're not there. They are no longer an option for me, even if I could put in some criteria that exactly describes whatever their new design is, they're still not going to come up. So we're going to hop over to the screen grab. Audio quality is going to be a little different on the screen grab, but we won't be there too long, and I will show you how you can do this if it's something that you would also like to do.
Okay, friends, here we are on the Hot Right Now page. And as you can see, there are no patterns here from Petite Knit or Andrea Mallory. And that is because I have hidden those designers from my search results. So they don't appear on the Hot Right Now. If I wanted to do a more specific search rather than browsing, they would not appear. And this is actually very easy to do. So I'm going to show you how to do it. And I have hidden just a handful of designers. So one that I also wanted to hide is My Favorite Things Knitwear. Again, nothing against My Favorite Things Knitwear, just a lot of very basic stuff, kind of repetitive. I don't really need it in my feed. So in order to hide a designer, you're going to find one of their designs, click these three dots, and then you're going to scroll to the bottom. Now you could just hide this particular pattern. So there are a couple of patterns like the ranunculus that I'm just not interested in, and I have hidden that. But you can also hide the designer as a whole. So that's what we're going to do. Click Hide This Designer. Now they're not gone forever. You can see right here it tells you where to find them in the My Notebook Hidden in Search filter. But moving forward, this designer's designs will not appear in my Hot Right Now or any kind of browsing or in the more specific search. Now let's say you want to unhide a designer. You're going to go, scroll up a little bit here. You're going to go over here to where it said My Notebook and then Hidden from Search. You're going to click that. And here's all the patterns that have been hidden based on me hiding these designers. And so the last thing I want to do here is I'm going to quickly unhide them, to show you how to do it. So I'm going to unhide Petite Knit. You just click those three dots again and stop hiding this designer. And then I'm going to unhide Andrea Mallory. And then we'll take a look at the Hot Right Now again. Whoops, patterns, Hot Right Now. And I always get rid of the free patterns because that, I think, can alter your Hot Right Now feed. That's neither here nor there. But now that I've unhidden them, you can see how many of their patterns are in the Hot Right Now. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 of the Petite Knit and Andrea Mallory patterns. Now, a lot of that is because Andrea is having her big birthday sale, but regardless, that's nearly 24, spaces in the Hot Right Now that when I hide these designers, other designers are going to appear instead. I'll be getting other pattern ideas pushed into my feed instead. So that is how you do that.
All right, so that's it. One simple trick. Now again, this one simple trick is not removing these designers from my life, my knitting community, anything. I know they're there, and if whatever their latest release is happens to be exactly what I want, I will still know about it. But it limits my exposure to them at that kind of key juncture where I'm actively looking for patterns. I am most likely to make a purchase, and much more importantly, because I could say, "Oh, I'm just not. I don't buy Andrea Mallory patterns." I could just say that. But what this does, more importantly, I think, is by removing those patterns, it's pushing other designers up to the front. So, as you saw in the screen grab, when I unhid Andrea Mallory and Petite Knit, almost the entire front page becomes those designers. With them hidden, a lot of other designers are getting pushed up to that front page right in front of my face, are coming up as my number 1, 2, 3 options when I'm searching for a pattern. And I'm not, scrolling down 3 or 4 pages of results to kind of get past the most popular designers. They're going to be right in front of my face. Are they going to be like an unheard of designer? Probably not. Probably still going to have to, you know, if you really want to discover unknown designers, that's something that's going to take a little bit of active effort. But this way, again, you are excluding whoever it is that maybe you're not interested in seeing their patterns right now, and more importantly, somebody else is coming up to take their place, and you're getting eyes on maybe a fresh pattern that you hadn't seen before, a fresh designer that you are not familiar with, which I think is the more important result of this little blacklisting technique, because it always comes up. I have nothing against Andrea Mallory or Petite Knit or any of these popular designers. I have knit an Andrea Mallory patterns in the past. I do have a weekender. They have built amazingly successful businesses in a niche industry. They've really done something pretty spectacular, and they've, more importantly, created a community for the people around them, for the people who are the big Petite Knit fans, the Andrea Mallory fans. They really have sort of a little knitting community that is supportive and fun and makes people happy, and that is all wonderful. I don't begrudge them that, and I don't have anything against them. I'm just really looking for ways to kind of freshen up what I'm seeing, put other designers in front of my face so that they're coming into consideration when I am looking for patterns. It's just a small way that I can kind of disrupt this homogenization process that I have seen in knitting, and sort of freshen up my personal knitting life in a time when that is unfortunately increasingly hard to do because of the ever-present algorithm. All right, friends, that is what I have for you today. A little tip on perhaps how to get some fresh patterns into your feed, fresh designers into your life. If you enjoyed this video or took anything from it, I hope that you will give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. New knitting videos here every Saturday. Also, don't forget to leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Any other tricks, suggestions you have for finding new designers and new patterns with kind of a minimal amount of work, because of course we're all we're all busy, and we should really be spending our time knitting, not scrolling. So leave a comment, let me know what you thought. Thanks again for checking out this video, and I will see you soon in another one.